Welcome back to the Quantum Connection podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Vanessa Baldwin, with my amazing co host, Heather Crimson. And we have a really important episode to share with you today. We are going to talk about the dangers of never being sick and why fevers are really your best friend with healing. So, this is a really good one. I think we get caught up in like, oh, I'm never sick. This is great. I haven't had a fever in years. I never get any illnesses. This is great. My immune system's really working really well. But we're going to just try to show you that maybe that is something that means that we need to work on some of our healing, right? So thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to please rate and review and tune in on YouTube as well with Bright Light Wellness and Enlightened Mood. And yeah, you ready to chat about this today, Heather?
Absolutely. This is such a profound topic, Vanessa, and I know people's heads are going to already be exploding like, what is going on? How can these ladies be saying this? Why would we want to possibly be sick, right? So I think that I would just want to preface this entire conversation, Vanessa, by saying that it's so important to be able to question our own beliefs, all of them, right, about everything. And health is one of the top of the list for me because we've basically been brainwashed, in my opinion. That might sound a little strong, but that's how I see it, to believe that our bodies, when they have any kind of symptoms, that that's a bad thing and that we have to find a way to get rid of that symptom because, excuse me, that symptom is the illness. Well, the symptom is not the illness, and the symptom is actually your body's attempt to mount a defensive reaction from your immune response to some sort of toxin or pathogen or whatever the case may be. And so all of our lives, we go along thinking that, fevers are bad and high fevers especially are really bad. Do whatever you've got to do to bring that fever down, pop some pills, put the kid in the cold bath, all these things. And actually what we're doing is interfering with the body's ability or natural process of fighting off any kind of infection or invader or whatever the situation is, right, Vanessa?
Yeah, I always say the symptoms are the healing and the body is always healing. So when your body is mounting, that runny nose or that fever or that cough, it is to remove the things that your body doesn't want, whether that's a toxin or a pathogen or whatever it is, right? So it's really, really important that we learn to view it as our body's not against us. Our body is working for us all the time, and that this response is actually means that, like, if we can get that fever and we can get that green snot coming out of our nose and cough it up and have the diarrhea or whatever it needs to do, like if you have a stomach virus, right, your body is expelling what it doesn't want, and your body is not stupid. It's really smart, and it actually is always working with you. That is what we have to remember. So those symptoms have a meaning always, and they're always trying to keep you healthy, strong, vital, and alive, right? So that's the job of the human body, right? So why would a fever ever be a bad thing? It's actually a really good thing in the body, right? So yeah,
We've
it's
talked a
just
lot in this podcast about suppression, and this goes hand in
mhm.
hand with that approach of trying to basically rid your body of these symptoms because we think of them as a bad thing. And then what we end up doing is suppressing our body's ability to defend itself, to enact these natural processes, which it wants to be able to do and should be able to do and
Yeah.
needs to do in order to heal itself. So by suppressing, meaning interfering with the body's natural processes. Now, granted, there are extreme situations where modern day medical intervention would be necessary, like sepsis. Like, we're not talking about those extreme cases, you guys. We're just talking about kind of the run-of-the-mill stuff that most people get, including like my grandmother. She got the measles. She got, I got the chicken pox. Like, we got these kinds of so-called viruses or epidemics, and I'm fine. She was fine. So there's this suppressive history of and modern day use of suppression that's rampant, that is actually making us sicker. And that's part of what we're talking about today. That's the central theme here.
Yeah, those childhood epidemics actually just make your immune system stronger, and then you're less likely to have chronic disease later on in life. So now that we squelched those away, where people don't, when my kids didn't get chickenpox, they didn't get measles, they didn't get these things. We've actually just made society weaker, is what we've done by removing those things, right? We've suppressed our immune systems with all the things we take, right? So I just want to pose this question. Like, think about when was the last time that you had a high fever, like 101.3 or higher? When was the last time you had an acute illness, right? If it's been years, there's a very high likelihood that you are struggling with some chronic health issues, right? And acute illnesses are things like UTIs, the flu, an ear infection, a strep, some sort of conjunctivitis, yeast infection, cough, stomach flu, etc. All of these things, right? If you haven't had one of those in a while, that means that your immune system is so suppressed due to all of the things that we take to deal with or manage our symptoms in this modern world, right? Your immune system is so compromised, so suppressed that it's too busy dealing with the chronic issues that it cannot even mount a response to things like pathogens or bacteria or viruses or toxins or whatever you want to call it that we come in contact with, right? The body can't even do it. And we're so quick to I know we've talked about this a lot, but let's just remind the listeners, like, what is suppression? Like, really, it's anything from a steroid to an antibiotic to an over-the-counter non-steroid anti-inflammatory to NyQuil to cough syrup to eardrops to eye drops to anti-nauseas, antifungals, the jabs that we get to quote unquote prevent childhood epidemics, you know, that if you get, like I said before, will actually strengthen your immune system. So all of these things and it's like Heather said, it's in an emergency situation. Yes, sometimes we need to call on these things, but it is the constant suppression that we do all the time. Like, how many people do you know that are constantly, and listen, this is not like, don't feel bad if this is you, because I was there too. How many non-steroidal anti-inflammatories did I take while I was marathon running? Like, daily. My husband used to live on NyQuil because he couldn't sleep. Like, that was how he used
A
to
lot of
fall
those
asleep.
NASIDs for menstrual cramps my whole life. So I
Yeah.
get you. It's like, no, we're not trying to shame anyone here. People,
No.
please hear that. This is really just to help you see another, possibility, to help you learn more about the
Mhm.
body, to validate that that's what we've all been taught. So of course, we do what we think is best. All of us are doing the best we can. I do
Yes.
need to add, Vanessa, a little tiny bit here about the suppression, and that includes emotions, you guys. So
Yes. I'm so
we're
glad you brought that up.
right, we're such an emotion phobic culture. I can't even tell you if I had a dollar for every client I've ever heard over the years when I was doing therapy tell me how they promised themselves they told themselves they were not going to cry in therapy that day, that they don't want to cry because oh yeah, it's a sign of weakness. It
Mhm.
just is so disconcerting to people, so, disturbing to them that they have this emotion that being vulnerable is so risky in our culture. It's ridiculous. It's like, what kind of culture has such a toxic relationship with emotions that we can't even be ourselves and have our own humanity? Like, that's jacking us up pretty bad, I have to say. And so suppressing your emotion just by bearing down, like, how do we do that, Heather? We bear down, we don't talk about it, we hold it inside, we become dysregulated by doing so. Not only are we suppressing the emotion, it's going to come out sideways. So this ties into, Vanessa, when we suppress whatever kind of symptom, whether it's an emotional one, physical one, and you guys, this all ties together. Like, you can't separate all this stuff out. Like, it's our body is one organism having all these experiences. So when you're suppressing, whether it's a runny nose or allergies, and then you're taking the allergy meds, or you have some grief and you're just not going to deal with that, right? It all comes out sideways. So when you suppress things, it's going to turn into something deeper, like depression, right?
Yes. And I'm so glad you brought up the emotional component, because I was thinking about this podcast. I'm like, oh, yeah, we got to talk about the emotional component. I'm like, there's Heather bringing it in. I love it.
Got you.
Yes, it
I
is,
got
because that is a form of suppression. When you feel sad and you can't feel that grief, or you feel anger and you just hold it all inside and you don't actually speak it out loud, or you don't have to be like being mean to people, but somehow you have to let this out. That you can't, it'll just consume you. And I know I've done these things myself too. So, like, we need to let the emotions flow. And it is sad, like, in our society, that, like, especially men, and I'm raising three boys, and I'm like, it's not bad if you cry, like, I always tell my kids that, like, it's a great thing. Like, you should feel sad at this moment. This is a moment where you should express it and you should feel it. And even when they feel anger, like, yeah, why are you angry? Tell me about it. Like, we need to, like, not, as parents sometimes, and I've seen it in my own childhood and other parents, and I've done it to my own kids, are like trying to shut it down automatically. Like, no, don't cry. Everything's fine. I'm like, well, maybe it's not all right. maybe he does need to cry and let it out. Like we need to have a different perspective on that part too, because yeah, the pathology is going to go deeper into the body when we suppress physical symptoms or emotional symptoms, either way. So that's really important to understand. So like a couple examples that I just have here is suppress allergies, right? You're constantly taking, allergy medication, then all of a sudden your allergies go away and you're like, oh, I'm doing better. And then like 4 or 5 months later, you're, having chronic depression, so these
Maybe
things,
also anxiety too, right?
it could be, that's just an example. It could be anything. Like it could go, it's just literally from a more physical thing to a more deeper pathology. Like a suppressed ear infection can lead to chronic migraines or behavioral disorder. And I mean, this is a great example to bring up, the ear infection one, because with my son, I've been working with him on homeopathy, of course, to heal some behavioral issues that, hyperactivity and kind of some aggressive behavior. And homeopathy's been really great. And we've seen things come up. And what keeps coming back is the ear infection, right? So what will happen is he'll take a remedy, he'll be aggravated, we've talked a little bit about that, like, so symptoms will be aggravated, and then it'll try to the body will try to rebalance, and the organism, his body will strengthen, and the ear infection will come back, and every time it comes back, it's come back more intense, which means that his body is actually getting stronger. And the last 2 times it's come back with fever. And what did I see after the fever? What do you think, Heather? Behavioral shifts changed.
Wow.
Behavioral got better. And it's not like it's gone, like it's just, and it keeps getting better. So I think it's just the body trying to like come back and forth between this balancing act, right? Of trying to like get rid of that suppression of that ear. He had a lot of ear infections as a kid that were suppressed. So the body's trying to like bring that back out to actually heal it in the right way instead of in a suppressive way, which of course that's what we're doing. We're using like homeopathy and
And
whatever.
you know, they used to do things like put tubes in ears, right? I mean, it's
Oh
bad,
yeah.
so
Mm,
bad.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if they're still doing that, but that's really
I
bad.
think that they absolutely still do that. And it's another suppression. Absolutely. So every time we remove an organ, even like I know some people have appendicitis and we have no choice, right? But every time we remove an organ from our body or remove a gallbladder, that all these things, this is a major form of suppression, hysterectomies, all these things, like our body really needs all of these things to survive. So, um, yeah, another one is like suppressed UTIs can lead to depression. I had that in my own case. I had a lot of suppressed UTIs that led to depression. And again, as my body's healing, what comes back up? These things come back up for me. So this is, in my own case, I see that, and I've, it's a very,
So it can go both ways, right? So you suppress the physical symptoms, it can lead to worse physical symptoms or emotional issues like depression and
yes,
so forth. You suppress emotions that can manifest as physical issues. It's not like one or the other. It's like
yes.
bidirectional, right? One or both is going to happen if you suppress.
Yeah, like if you think of the remedy phosphoric acid, right? Like if you suppress your grief in that remedy, what happens? They lose their hair, they and this is, that constitution. They lose their hair, they get diabetes, they have chronic fatigue, right? But then if you look at like a Nat Mur and they suppress their grief, they have more depression and they have more sun sensitivity and they have like it depends on really like the way that your body's going to react, I guess, right? But yeah, these are just some things that can happen. Like a lot of times, like suppressed skin eruptions lead to asthma or even like behavioral symptoms or gut symptoms, right? This is just the body going deeper. Suppressed strep goes to pneumonia, it's chronic, move the gallbladder, then you have chronic constipation. Like these are just these are just examples of things that we see often, that happen. So yeah, it's just, we need to learn to be with our symptoms, accept those symptoms, understand it's part of the healing process, not fear them, and just support the body in the healing, support instead of suppress. That's the big takeaway,
Well,
right?
that includes things that unfortunately a lot of people are really resistant to doing or they are not allowed, so-called allowed to do because you can't take time off work, rest, do
Yeah.
nothing, fast, right? It's really, really sad because we need to have space. We need to have time to just be and let our bodies do what it needs to do instead of pushing ourselves. But many people nowadays, they like, oh, I can't be sick, it's not good. And I get it. You have kids, you have stuff you have to do. But ideally, we need to be able to take a break, for God's sakes, and let our bodies do its job instead of overriding or pushing it down or taking a drug, right? So that we can keep marching on. That's a real big issue.
It's a huge issue in our society because it's like, God forbid we miss a day of work. God forbid, you know, you only get so many sick days, right? Or like we just, it's not honored. Like it's like, it's such a go, go, go hustle culture that we live in. And it's just, that's not right. That's not how the body's designed, you know? And again, if you're, if you have an acute, so say you have the flu or something like that, and it's taking a week to get over, this is not a good sign of immune health either, right? That's showing that your immune system is weak as well, that that's the other example. So say you do get acutes, but you can never get over them. Like, so it takes like you get a flu and it's like 3 weeks later, you're still dealing with the flu. Your body couldn't get over it. Yeah, then you're going to need some support. And that's why you should call on something like, you know, that's non-suppressive, like homeopathy or, you know, some other, you know, a fast or whatever it is you can do, you know, get out in the sunlight more, all of the things that we teach to get the body stronger. But um, the body is designed to heal, giving the right energy, the right frequencies, the right rest, recovery, bone broth, you know, whatever we need to give, the right nutrients, right? So we need to be allowing the body to have space to do the healing and not rush to get back to, you know, just normal life. That really hinders the whole thing, you know, and my kids have never missed more school since taking homeopathy. And I don't think of it as a bad sign at all because their immune system is getting so much stronger. Like, so if you take a look at my oldest son, his name's Thomas. So he had a lot of suppressed skin eruptions, like a lot of suppressed skin eruptions. Everything he
Pressed
had,
by steroid creams or topical creams or what?
yeah, steroid creams, topical creams, a lot of cortisone creams, a lot of that. Some internal stuff too, because he had a lot of eczema, he had a lot of allergies as a kid. So he also had like Coxsackie, and he had all these like other things that were suppressed, impetigo, lots of suppressed skin eruptions. So eventually those things went away, but then he had like chronic anxiety, and then he had chronic bloody noses, and like, you know, a lot of some behavioral disorders. And he was never sick though. Like he never missed school. He was always at school, never missed any. Like he literally, I had 100% attendance. This last couple of years since being on homeopathy, he's had some strong acutes and a fever. And that fever, I mean, I was like literally thrilled. He just had a fever last week. I was like literally thrilled. And it was
Probably
101.4,
dancing.
Heather. I mean, literally, this is the second kid who's gotten a fever since being on homeopathy. And these things were not present, was my point. The fever was not here before
Well, this
this.
is the thing, you guys, the fever being able to manifest now and Thomas's body being able to have a fever is preventing him from getting cancer and God knows what other horrible illnesses later on in life.
Yes, because if you can get a fever, you're less likely to have cancer in later on life. You're less likely to have chronic disease later on in life, right? So this is so important. You know, we need the body to burn up the crap that we accumulate, and this is the only way the body really, it's the biggest, it's the number one mechanism for the body to heal. That's why the fever is so important. It's going to burn up whatever pathology that the body needs to, whatever that may be, whatever it's a toxin. Like I said, it could be either thing, but yeah, that's how the
So
body
what did
does
you
it.
notice about him after the fever? Like, you know, the growth spurts and the improved behavior and all of
Well,
that.
the improved behavior, the mental cognition is another thing that you can see as well. Just the better like disposition, you know what I'm saying? I think it's more behavioral things that I see with my boys. So yeah, it's huge. And that's known. Like after fevers, after, you know, having strong acutes, you will see those things, especially in children, whether, like you said, it's a growth spurt, whether we see improved behavior, whether they see better mental clarity, better ability to handle emotions, all the things like can really make huge milestones can happen. So same thing with us, right? So
Absolutely. I have to be honest here and tell everyone I haven't had a fever in I don't know how long. So I will Vanessa will be the first to know when I finally, and because that worries me to be honest. So talk about a paradigm shift, right? Vanessa, like that worries
yes.
me. I'm getting older now and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't even know. I've had sicknesses, like I've had the flu, but I never got the high fever. So I'm
Nice.
waiting for that. I'm hopeful for that. And I'm just like, please, please let me have this fever because I don't want it to turn into, I don't want it to be at high risk later on. Because if I were healthy, ideally, you should be having an acute at least like once a year, maybe twice. And that's it. It's like your body's doing its reset, it's clearing out the junk. You get that acute. That's a sign of high level of health. So my level of health is definitely not high because I can't remember the last time I had a fever.
Yeah, and I'm in the same position as you. I mean, think about all the suppressive therapy. I mean, the amount of suppression that I put into my body is insanity. And that's what wanted me to have a chronic disease. Like I know that, several of them. Suppression is a big part of my story. And I haven't had a fever. I do know when the last time was. It was 2018 on a cruise. I had a very high fever.
Oh,
But that's a long time ago. It's
actually
2024.
something. I haven't had one for God knows how many.
But
I
it's so
don't
true,
remember.
Heather. Like every time I meet with clients, and that's one of the questions that's on my intake form is when was the last time you had a high fever? Because it tells me their level of health. It tells me how strong their immune system is, right? And most of the people who are coming to me with complex chronic illness, the answer is I don't remember. And I'm like, well, this is why. Like we need to strengthen the body so it can get a fever. Now, I haven't had a fever since homeopathy yet either, so I'm hopeful it happens, but I have had stronger acutes that my body has been able to, so that shows a good sign. And my body's been able to get rid of them on their own. Well, one of them, two, no, two of them that got rid of them on their own. One time I needed a remedy. That was the first acute I got. I needed a remedy to support it. So I know my body's getting stronger, so that's what's most important. But yeah, there's two options. Like in a healthy individual, yes, we should have acutes 1 to 2 times a year, and they should not stick around, right? They should just be like short-lived. It's a
Like
few
2 to 3
days.
days, 2 to 3 days. Yeah,
2 to 3 days, yeah, your body mounts a high fever, that 101.3 or higher, and then a few days it's gone, and you actually feel like amazingly better afterwards. Like that's the ideal situation. That's a really high level of health. But I think most people who think that they're in good health, they haven't had an acute or a fever in like years, and they think that's good, but they have like they're taking high blood pressure medication or antidepressants or this and that, and they don't realize that this is part of the issue.
or they
So
don't sleep so well, or they're
yeah.
gaining weight, or they can't gain weight, or their hormones are imbalanced, or their guts got issues. Like there's so many modern day, like small to more severe chronic health issues that it's just a tragedy. And I don't want to have this where I can't have it on YouTube, but the pokes are actually the most ubiquitous now, heavily promoted. Um,
That's
suppressive
the
therapy, and we can't even talk about it. Like there's so much censorship, it's ridiculous. So
Yeah.
let's just take a look at that, you guys, and that's not going to help your health, I have to say. And
Oh.
so if you're having a hard time listening to this, I just want you to consider how that is supporting your health, or maybe it's suppressing your health. Just kind of keep an open mind here.
Well, it is the biggest suppressive therapy that we put into our bodies. And it's no surprise that we have a chronic disease epidemic starting younger and younger and younger. And we look at the schedule of 70 something, that we recommend. And that is really scary. It's really scary. And me and you, like, I think about my own children, and I didn't know better, not better or whatever you want to say. I didn't know this information. Okay. Then, and they received, and I only had a few, maybe what did we have, like 10 or something like that, right? So they've received a ton. And it's like, man, and I wound up with a chronic disease, right? Or several of them as I got older. So now it worries me for what's going to happen to them. And that's why I'm so big on keeping them on homeopathy,
Yep.
because I know I'm strengthening their immune system by doing that. But I just also think it's really important to share here that when we do get sick, that we think, like we've been trained to think that we have to have these pokes, right? We're trained to think that we have to have them for the greater good, and because the epidemics are going to kill us. And we're also trained to think that when we have pneumonia or strep throat or whatever it is, or UTI, that the only option is allopathic medicine. And that is not the truth. I have treated many acutes on myself, my kids, and clients with homeopathy with great success. And that's because there are other alternative things that you can do. And homeopathy doesn't suppress, it supports. And that's not, as much as the pharmaceutical wants you to believe that that's your only option, it's not. So that I just want to throw that out there. Like, you have other options. You could get over fetal flu possibly just by sitting out in the sun for a few days. And that's the truth of it. It depends on your level of health, but it could happen. Like, we have other options. We don't have this just, it's not this black and white thinking that there's only one way. And it's also not black and white that if what you're doing alternatively is not working, right? Sometimes you do have to call on other medications because we don't have any other choices because your body's just not strong enough yet. It doesn't mean that it won't get there if you keep working on your health, because it will if you keep working on your health. But there is that time too. So it can't be this black and white thinking, right? There's only one way. And I think that a lot of us think that there's just only one way, and there's not.
Nope. But I want people to know they have options and you want to empower yourself, gather information. You
Yeah.
are in charge of your health. Don't just give over your health to someone else. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So, yeah, so when you get an acute and you get a fever, it's like taking your immune system to the gym. I think that's I learned that from my favorite homeopathic trainer, Heather Shepherd. Like, I love that saying because it is. It's like you work out your muscles, you go out, you go to the gym and you lift your biceps, you want to get your biceps stronger, right? So when you get an acute or you get a fever, that's like the same thing. You're strengthening that system, right? It's like the best thing that you can do for your body, right? So
Mhm.
yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like the difference between treating an acute with homeopathy versus treating an acute with allopathic medicine. And again, the choice is always yours, but it's good to be informed and to know the difference. And we've kind of touched on these. So when you treat with allopathic medicine, you are suppressing the immune system. When you treat with homeopathy, you're actually strengthening the immune system, because what the body is actually doing, it's up leveling its health, and it's actually the homeopathy is just, remember, it's just that catalyst, that stimulus to help the body and remind the body to self-heal. So your body is actually getting an upgrade when you use homeopathy. So that's pretty amazing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's much safer, much more, it's very effective and very gentle. I mean, you do need to get the right remedy. So if you don't have the right remedy, then it's not going to do much. So you do need to meet with somebody to get the right remedy or have some knowledge on homeopathy, but it's very safe, it's very effective and very gentle. Whereas,
Well, safe and to the point of where I mean, it's 100% safe. You might
yeah,
have like what we call an aggravation because your body is going, oh yeah, I need to have an acute or I need to,
well, let's
discharge.
remind what the aggravation might be. So say if you had a
Right.
flu,
Right.
right? So maybe you're going to get a little bit more fatigue when you take the remedy, or you're going to get a little bit more congestion or green snot coming out, right? Or the fever might go up to help your body heal. Or if you had an ear infection, the pain could get worse for a very short time, but then it would get better.
Mhm.
Or if you had a stomach virus, you might expel a little bit more, right? And then it should be better,
Well,
right?
because your body's actually working better. Let's just be
Mhm.
clear about that. So there's that I would call a benefit. It's not really some side of like it's not a risk, you know what I mean? Where
No.
Whereas with pharmaceuticals and all the iatrogenic illnesses, like I think the third leading cause of death, if I recall the recent stats on that, the third leading cause of death in the country is medication,
Oh my
pharmaceuticals.
God, yes, yes.
So let's
It is
look at
a it,
let's
it's
look
a
at
to- yeah.
side by side.
It's a
Mhm.
toxin. You're putting harmful ingredients into your body. You're definitely damaging your mitochondria and all of your everything. It's a toxin that goes into your body. So yeah, you destroy your gut microbiome. I mean, unfortunately, and allopathic medicine actually has the ability to turn on genetic predispositions to diseases, whereas homeopathy has the ability to reverse the damage that allopathic medicine has done. So that's a really big difference, in taking them. And yeah, I mean, and honestly, allopathic medicine is going to be that short-term band-aid approach. It's going to be a fix. Maybe when you take the I don't know, allergy medicines, that's like we said before, you're going to get a short-term relief of those allergy symptoms, but eventually that short-term band-aid is going to lead to deeper pathology and more issues in the body. So yeah, that's not awesome. You don't want to do that. So, and then the last thing.
About
Go ahead.
the way that homeopathy works is we're looking at energetic expression of your symptoms. So how is it manifesting? Because one person could have the flu and have these set of symptoms, and another person could have the flu and they have a different set of symptoms. So homeopathy is actually so personalized, so individualized that it's tailored. And that's what all doctors used to practice in this country, right? And
Yes.
so it's very, very tailored to your expression of the collective symptoms that you have in the moment. Whereas with allopathy and pharmaceuticals, it's like one thing for everyone based on this diagnostic code. So look at the differences there. It's like I would much rather have the one that's tailored to my specific situation, whatever my body's doing, versus like, oh, it's this one for everyone, you know?
Yeah, it's individualized care versus just basically, generic care, right? It's like the same medication for whatever it is. So if you have a stomach virus, right, you're going to get the same medication. Or if I don't even know, I guess they give like anti-nausea, right, or something like that. That's going to be that same one pill. Or if you have a UTI, everybody's going to get the same antibiotic. Or where homeopathy is really taking into consideration you on the physical, mental, and emotional plane, and the symptoms that you're experiencing during that time. So like you said, someone with a flu might be thirstless, weepy, whiny, want a lot of company, and another person with a flu might be thirsty for cold drinks and like drinking like sips every 5 minutes with burning pains, chills, and a hot head. Like it really is very that's why when we say homeopathy, like that's the other thing that people will say, like, what can I take for a headache? What can I take for stomach virus? What can I take for? I'm like, well, it doesn't really work like that because we treat you, not the disease. So, or whatever the condition is, right? So I can't just like give you a generic headache remedy that doesn't exist. Where is your headache? Is it in the front? Is it in the eye? Does it come before your period? Does it come after your period? Like there are so many questions I have. Like, are you really thirsty? Do you stick your feet out of the covers? Like I could go on and on. Like I'm going to want to know all of these things, and Heather too, like about you, to figure out the remedy that matches you and what's going on with your headache. It's not just, we don't just take an anti-inflammatory for the headache. We actually try to uproot the headache. That's the big difference, right? So yeah, it's
Totally different
totally,
paradigm, you guys.
it really, really is a totally different paradigm. Yeah. And it can have, homeopathy has long lasting results that stick because your body did the work. Whereas allopathic medicine, they can't ever claim that. Allopathic medicine has never cured anything.
No,
Like,
that's not the point.
no, it's not the point. They want to keep you sicker, actually. So,
Right. It's just a temporary, it's seemingly amelioration, but it's not a healing. It's just a band-aid covering up an interruption of the processes your body was doing. You're basically just getting rid of the symptom. That does not equate a good thing. That's not how
no.
it works.
No, because when you stop the symptom, you stop the healing.
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
like the biggest takeaway that I want people to understand. And that is such a hard thing to wrap your mind around. You're like, oh, the symptom went away, I'm better. I'm like, but you just stopped the process.
Yeah.
You stopped the fever. You stopped the way that your body was expelling, and you just pushed it in there. Like, where do we think these things go? Like, so say I take a antibiotic for a UTI, right? Like, where do we think it goes? Do we think it just like disappears? No, it's still there. Like most of the time, like, and I know this because I've had done a lot of, microbiome and bladder biome testing. And I guarantee if you test any single person, whether they have symptoms or not, you're going to find stuff, right? I guarantee it. Nobody's going to have a clean bill. The things are still there because just because you suppressed it doesn't mean it went away. It's still there, is my point.
That's awful.
Yes, it is awful. So if your body expels it, that's actually the better thing that we want to do, right? So
Mhm. All right,
yeah, so
Vanessa, we're going up on the end of our time here.
I know. Well, I think that we've really kind of hammered this home, the idea that we really need acutes, that our fevers are our body's like natural ability to clean out the junk that we've accumulated in our system. And that's, that not having acutes and fevers is really the impetus to having chronic disease, right? And that the only medicine that I know and I'm aware of that brings back fever and bring back acute symptoms or like, short-term acute illnesses is homeopathy. So that's the one that we recommend doing. And
Wait, there's
yeah.
a few more pointers you have here that I want to cover. First, this beautiful quote: "Give me the power to produce fever, and I'll cure all disease," by
Mhm.
Parmenides. I've never heard of him. That's cool. And
Hermeses, I don't know.
and then this other one says the psychotic patients get a fever and their psychosis goes away. Well, what does
Yes.
that tell you? That's huge, right?
Yeah, we think about people with dementia, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, all these people, when they have a fever, the mental emotional picture clears, but as soon as they give them a medication or whatever, like if they can, because this is a deep pathology, right? But if you can get them strong enough to elicit a fever, that deep, those mental emotional symptoms will be better. But the problem is that then we suppress it again, and then the mental emotional just goes right back. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
but that's the
sad, but
power of the body being able to slough off those layers of suppression. Then the more the immune system is enhanced, then you can get back to health, right? But the
yeah,
more layers of baggage, emotional baggage, and then layers of suppression are like you, I love your saying, Vanessa, blocks on the immune system, or maybe
yeah.
that's how I hand you. But then it's like the immune system can't function. We're going to have worse and worse health issues, mental and physical.
I
So
really think it's one of the reasons why we are having the chronic disease epidemic is just all the suppression that we've been doing to our bodies. And it's not just the suppression that you've put in your body, it's the generation to generation because we carry all this energetically, right? So it's just, I honestly think that's why chronic disease is starting younger and younger and mental emotional stuff. I mean, there's other things, there's other factors, lack of sunlight, we're always indoors, the non-native EMFs, all these other things are playing a role, but I think that this is the bigger one that's not talked about as much. That's really, really important, and happy to share it, on this podcast. But even things like kids like with autism and with epilepsy, same thing. They get fevers and all of a sudden their epilepsy clears up or their autism is better. So like if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, wow, I haven't had a fever and acute in a long time, but I'm dealing with all these chronic diseases, you know, think about homeopathy, and it doesn't have to be with us. I mean, amazing if it is, beautiful. We
it
love
should
it. But
be, you should call Vanessa or me.
I love it. Yeah. But just think about like trying to implement that into your arsenal and your healing journey, because I think it's really, really important. And then I also wanted to mention too, there was a famous doctor, and I can't remember his name right now, but he injected patients with strep who had cancer. And when he did that, they would produce a high fever and then their cancer would go away as well. And he cured many cases of cancer with that as well. So again, it's showing that high fever can result in, extinguishing the cancer in your body. So
Amazing.
it's pretty incredible. And I know we've mentioned this before on the podcast, but infrared saunas are a beautiful technique, and I love them, and they can do a lot of great things for our healing. They can improve our mitochondria and our easy water and help us detox and sweat and all the things, but they're not the same as this fever response that your body makes, because your immune system generates it, your body is doing it on its own, it's not artificially induced. So the fever is the response from the immune system is a way um better option that you want to elicit. Then I mean, not that sauna can't be supportive, but it's not the same thing as fever
Well, it's
because
not a substitute for a fever. Your body has to do the work itself, not because
yes, thank you.
elicited from the outside. You're hot because of the sauna, not because of your own body's own processes. So you need
Right.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
endogenous. Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to produce that yourself to really burn up everything that needs to be burned up. Because people will say, oh, the sauna is detoxing. And it does do some detox, but so does being out in sunlight, does some detox. That's true. But when your body makes that fever response, that's that heavy burning up of the pathology that we don't want, and the toxins that we don't want, or we're going to call it. So I encourage you too, like if you're listening to this and you're just like, okay, I'm not sure about homeopathy. I don't know if I'm ready to have a fever again and acutes again. That sounds a little intimidating. Just start treating acutes with homeopathy. There is a great way to start as well, because then at least you're avoiding the suppressive medications, right? So you can
Right.
support your body instead of suppressing your body, right? So yeah, I
Somewhere.
think, yeah, start somewhere, right?
You have a course on that, Vanessa. Tell people about your course on acutes and
Yeah,
other
I have a few, and the point of that is really to empower you and to give you the knowledge to treat some first aid or some acute conditions all on your own with homeopathy. So if you take these courses, you can say, oh, when I have this X, Y, and Z, my kid has a bloody nose, or my kid has, stomach virus or whatever, you can go ahead and treat those on your own without having to call on a homeopath. You have that knowledge base. You're learning homeopathy. Start learning to and be empowered, especially if you're a parent with kids. Like this is great, because you're just supporting their health so much. So I have one on first aid, which treats like things like, bruising and, burns, sunburns, shock, fractures, food poisoning, headaches, all kinds of things. Muscle and joint sprains, strains, bloody noses, all the things. And then I have like another one on ear infections and another one that covers like UTIs, kidney infections, kidney stones, bladder infection. I just helped my dad pass a kidney stone, which was amazing. Go homeopathy, because he was in a lot of pain, and then just the remedy helped him move through it. There's also one on flu, which is great to have. So those are the ones I have now currently. So you can check those out. They're on my website under the homeopathy courses tab. And I'm working on one for women's health. So homeopathy for women's health, which will cover things like menopause and PMS and fertility and all those kinds of hormonal issues, PMS and just, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm also working on one for common kids ailments, which will
Nice.
be kind of similar. So I'm excited about all these. I like making these courses. So
See
yeah,
that.
just check them. Yeah, it's fun for me,
If
check
somebody
them out.
wants to just go directly to you for a consultation, your website,
Yes, is at brightlightwellnesscoach.com. Yeah, you can check that out. And for you, Heather?
enlightenedmood.com.
Yeah, so book an initial homeopathic, consultation if you haven't had a fever and acute in years, up level your health, and you can be more stronger, more resilient. And I would also say adding in the quantum lifestyle is going to just maximize the healing. So that would be my other suggestion as well. So
Yep.
yeah, they marry very
Homeopathy,
nicely.
yes, homeopathy plus circadian practices is the best combination.
Yes, 100%. So we hope you enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun chatting with you about this, Heather. And we hope it really informed you, of all of this. So yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, you guys. We'll see you next week.